I was going to say, I hate after that beautiful song to start us off with a joke. But, so there's a Zen master visiting New York. And you know, when you go to New York, you have to go to a hot dog vendor. So he goes to the hot dog vendor and he says, make me a hot dog with everything on it, everything on your cart. So the vendor says, of course. He takes out the hot dog, everything on the cart. He puts all the fixings on it. And the Zen master then pays with a $20 bill. And the vendor puts the bill in the register and closes it shut. And the Zen master said, well, I'm sorry, but where's my change? And the vendor says, brother, change comes from within. Is that good? Well, of course, to change and evolve our consciousness, we need to be conscious about it. We can go on autopilot, and then we'll get an autopilot life, right? But if you want to have a conscious evolution, a conscious life, then conscious action has to be taken. And we evolve our consciousness in our life with a conscious consciousness. And so the vendor is right. Change comes from within. So in the last three chapters of Robert Brumet's book, Birthing a Greater Reality, A Guide for Conscious Evolution, I'm wrapping it up, and it's a lot of information. So for the few of you who are reading it, it's a lot of information. It's very dense, but I would encourage you to read it because I think the last couple chapters in particular are very powerful. So I'm going to do my best to summarize all of that. But I thought, what I'll do is, in the last chapter, he has 5 steps for conscious evolution, which he outlines, and then we'll do a deep dive. So here's our first slide. So 5 guidelines for conscious evolution. 1, make friends with paradox. 2, cultivate the power of intention and attention. 3, embrace everything, be attached to nothing. 4, listen, listen, listen. The universe speaks in 1,000 voices, 1,000 ways, and 1,000 voices. And 5, to birth new worlds, we must dance with chaos. Okay, so let's jump in. So the first one, make friends with paradox. So he discusses how paradoxes are everywhere in our human existence, right? The desire for freedom, and then our desire for security. Our desire to bond with someone, and our desire for autonomy. And then, of course, in our spiritual circles, we also have paradoxes, like to find oneself, you must lose oneself. Or to live, we must die. Or to become everything, you must become nothing, right? We hear these paradoxes. But here's why Robert Brumet says that paradoxes are so important. Because ultimately, what we want as humans is to come home to our essential nature. And so when we look at how everything and everyone is connected, even to things that are seemingly opposites, which can be true, we then realize our own divine nature and more of this idea of connectivity, of our oneness. So there's a simple statement that I really resonated with this week, and it was just, I am that. I am that. So when we see someone doing something and we're like, oh, I would never do that, or how dare they do that, or why are they doing that? I am that. Meaning, remembering we're all connected by the same force. And so asking, how can I see what another has done that's hurt or upset me, that I think is wrong? And instead of reacting negatively or judgmentally, instead asking myself, and when have I done that? Or what part of me is that? Because I am that. So I know, there's going to be at least 1 or 2 of you that says, but Stacy, there's people who have killed somebody. I haven't killed anybody. I may not have killed somebody literally, But I can tell you, I have killed my own spirit by the way I've talked to myself, or judged myself, or talked about myself many, many times, causing my own suffering. I am that is a very powerful phrase. It's also a very powerful paradox, it seems. He gives another example around the idea of desire. And I wish I actually should have made a slide for this quote. It's Emily Cady, who's one of our original New Thought teachers. And she wrote, "Desire in the heart is always God tapping at the door of your consciousness." Isn't that beautiful? On the other hand, Buddha says, desire is the cause of suffering. So here we have two seeming paradoxes in teachings. So we have an opportunity to explore them. So this idea of what is desire there? Well, so then in one case, Emily Cady is talking about the desire of that pureness of our hearts, our dreams, our passions, what we want to manifest in our lives. The type of desire that is filtered through the heart. And then Buddha, on the other hand, is speaking about that desire which is craving and attachment, those things filtered through the mind. That desire to have a story and attach a story to it. So both are true. Do you see that? Although they seem to be opposite teachings at first glance, both are true. So here's what Brumet says. It's on this slide. Your purpose in life is to fully embrace all aspects of your nature, your oneness and your separation, infinity and limitation, reality and illusion. And ultimately, you're here to be the eyes, ears, feet of the One. So the first step in conscious evolution is to not only embrace paradoxes, but to explore them. Because when you dig deeper, what does it mean to you personally? How does that paradox show up in your life or in your choices? And how can you more fully embrace the expression of being the One? So we begin to awaken ourselves from what's in, out, and it starts by looking at what seems to be opposites. Okay, number 2 is cultivating the power of intention and attention. It's a tricky one, right? Intention takes focused attention. But first we have to know ourselves. That's self-awareness. Well, what's self-awareness? Self-awareness is being aware and paying attention to and observing ourselves. And as we have self-awareness and we place attention there, well, then we can set an intention of what we want to create. So attention becomes intention, and then once your intention is made, you can put your attention there. Do you see how it's a circle? I really went around myself the last couple days with that one. I'm like, but this, but then that, but then this, but then that, right? So here's a recent personal example. So you all know a couple months ago, I broke my toe and I couldn't exercise after I just restarted my exercise routine. I couldn't exercise for 5 weeks. I found, different routines I could do without my toe, but still. And so finally, I get right back into it. And wouldn't you know, a couple Saturdays ago, extra hard workout, because now I'm really pushing myself, right? Because we do that. So I extra push myself, and then my elbow flares up, my old back injury flares up, and I think, are you kidding me? I can't exercise again? I start going into victim mode. I start getting depressed about it. I start spiraling, right? This always happens to me. And then I thought, okay, Stacy, because we have to have a talk with ourselves, right? Okay, Stacy, you can keep crying and raging and being depressed about this, which is fine, but we don't want to live there. So I could keep crying and raging and being depressed about it and keeping myself in suffering, or I can move myself into self-care. I can move myself into my tools of prayer and visualization, slowing down, calling my doctor, my sports chiropractor to get the care that I need. See, so then I set my intention on placing my attention on staying calm and employing the best steps that I could in that moment to take care of myself. And he even writes in the book, and this I held on to, because he says, one of the most important things we can do is love the body. Be aware of it and accept it just where it is right now. Accepting where we are right now. So then my intention became, where do I want to place my attention? And again, I don't want you to hear that being angry or sad is unspiritual. It's when we deny being angry or sad that we slow down our healing process. So embrace it. But of course, we want to walk through that valley. We don't want to build a house there. So feel the feelings, experience them, and then where do I want to place my attention? And what is my intention? So here's the questions we can ask ourselves on this slide. Asking ourselves, where do I want to place my intention and attention? Where is my attention? Where do I want my attention to be? Based on where my attention is, how can I create a new intention for myself? I know, I can see you all thinking about it. It's like me too. I was like, attention, intention, intention, attention. Try saying that fast 5 times too. It can be your new mantra. Yeah. Where do I want to place my intention and attention? Okay, number 3. Embrace everything, be attached to nothing. That's another paradox, isn't it? So in this case, we become more self-aware in order to cultivate a greater reality and conscious evolution. And we begin by seeing all parts of ourselves. Embracing all parts of ourselves, not being attached to, I must be this way. I have to show up this way. You are the thinker of your thoughts. You're not your thoughts. You are the light and also the dark. We have to look at all parts of ourselves, even those parts we don't like or we don't want to look at, also known as our shadow. But we look at this to be whole. Otherwise, you're only half of the yin-yang symbol, which I have here to remind you. This Tao symbol that reminds us that within the light, there is that existence, that spark of darkness. Within the darkness, there is that spot of light. Both exist, and both are needed to be whole. So embracing everything, all parts of ourself, all parts of life, and be attached to nothing. That's where our forgiveness practice comes in, where we really need to sit with forgiving ourselves, forgiving others, but embracing all of it. Author and spiritual coach Xavier Dagba writes, we cannot reach our highest expression of self-love if we are actively trying to reject parts of ourselves, even the ones we see negative. Because it's another form of self-abandonment. Our true self includes all parts of ourself. Just breathe into that. Yeah. So here's what Brumet writes on this slide. By facing the demons within us, we transform them into angels. That within ourself, which seems the most intractable, difficult, and despicable, that can provide the greatest blessing. This is how we embrace our wholeness. We embrace the whole. Number 4, listen, listen, listen. The universe speaks in 1,000 ways. This is the importance of mindfulness. This is why our meditation this morning was more of a mindfulness meditation. You're not going to get it perfect. I can hear some of you. I can't do it perfectly. My mind wanders. Your mind is supposed to wander. Just accept your mind wanders. That's what minds do. That is actually normal. You're not going to get it perfect, and that's okay. If you keep coming back to, I have to get it perfect, you're keeping yourself in suffering. So just accept the mind wanders. Mindfulness is about paying attention to our attention. I'm judging myself about my meditation. Let me come back to my breath. I'm thinking about what happened 10 years ago. Let me come back to my breath. I'm paying attention and aware of what my thoughts are, what my behaviors are. Mindfulness is about that practice of mindfulness to be fully present to our experience. Fully present to our experience and to our reality. Because just as a reminder, we see things as we are, not necessarily as things are. And that's what's so important with self-awareness and mindfulness. We can see ourselves. How am I showing up? We get to get quiet, and I love this term. He says, bear attention, B-A-R-E, bear attention, meaning being aware of what is experienced. I like to say it's the eyes behind the eyes. We come into awareness, and he says, seeing is just seeing. Hearing is just hearing. Thinking is just thinking. Feeling is just feeling. Nothing is considered good or bad, right or wrong. It's just what is here right now. It just is. So we had another leak in our kitchen. It looked like it was going to be huge because it meant the bathroom and the kitchen. And I just said, it just is. We can get really worked up about this, or we can keep taking a breath and coming back to, it just is. This is just what's here right now. Or I can observe myself, like with my hurt elbow and back, getting really worked up. And I can observe myself saying, but I can shift. This is where our mindfulness practice comes in. And from this awareness, what happens? We become more open-minded and open-hearted. We become more accepting. It just is. And as we become more accepting and more open-hearted, open-minded, guess what? We can listen, really listen to the universe, to our higher self. Because once your heart is open, you can begin to ask yourself, and so what would my experience be if my greatest desire were fulfilled? And listen, not with I've got the answer in my head already, but really listening. Because I don't have attachment to it. But what would my experience be if my greatest desire were fulfilled? And then once that's fulfilled, what do I want? But being open-hearted. Ultimately, Brumet writes, your greatest desire is woven into a larger pattern that balances and fulfills the needs of humanity, the planet, and the universe itself. Isn't that fantastic? He says there is a divine pattern within your soul speaking to your heart through its deepest desire. So when we get out of our way, we can be mindful, open our hearts, and just listen. Because your greatest desire is woven into a larger pattern that fulfills the needs of humanity itself. That's how important you are. So listening. And then number 5, to birth new worlds, we must dance with chaos. You know, he dedicates a whole chapter in his book, Living Originally, to dancing with chaos. The guy likes to dance with chaos. But here's the thing. If you don't dance with chaos, you're going to get caught up in the hurricane. How many of you have gotten caught up in the hurricane? Oh, yeah. Yeah. So instead of life carrying you away, because life is going to life, so instead of getting carried away, we can dance with disruption. We can dance with grief. We can dance with the shadow. We can dance with joy. We can dance with beauty. We can dance with all of it. Again, to be whole, we need to see and be aware of all of it. And so wholeness is about being complete in each moment, even the chaotic ones. To realize that you're still whole, you're still divine, even if you feel like you're on that roller coaster of life or you're floating down the river without a life jacket. You are still connected to the allness of life. You still matter. Your soul is still tied to the all. And once we accept that, it makes it easier to dance instead of resist. So you can try to stop the flood, or you can flow with the flood. But the key here is to consciously surrender to the process, the new life, the whatever is wanting to be birthed. Step on the dance floor, honor your dance partner, and dance with the chaos. And get support when needed, right? As we dance through the chaos, get the support you need. So, here's the 5 guidelines for conscious evolution. As we end this series, I was thinking, and I know I've shared it before, the great Hindu legend. And I thought it really summarized this book well. There's a legend that says that at one time all men, women were gods, but they misused their divinity. And so Brahma, the chief god, decided to take it away and hide it where they would never find it again. So he called a council with the lesser gods to consider where to bury man and woman's divinity. And so they quickly answered, "We'll bury it into the deepest parts of the earth." But Brahma said, "No, that's not going to do, because they'll dig deep down in the earth and they're going to find it." So then the lesser gods said, "We're going to sink their divinity into the deepest of the ocean, the deepest waters." And Brahma said, "No, not there, for humans will learn to dive into the deepest waters, search the ocean bed, and find it." "Well then," said the lesser gods, "we're going to take it to the highest top of the highest mountain on earth, and we'll hide it there. Men and women will never find it there." But Brahma said, "Oh, no, for humans will eventually climb to the top of every mountain." So the lesser gods gave up. That's why they're the lesser gods. And they said, "Well, we don't know where to hide it, for it seems that there's no place on earth or in the sea that man and woman will not eventually reach it." And so then Brahma said, "Here's what we'll do with man and woman's divinity. We will hide it deep within man and women themselves, for they will never think to look for it there." And so the legend concludes, ever since then, men and women have been going up and down the earth, climbing, digging, diving, exploring, searching for something that is already within themselves. Your divinity is within you, and you are a co-creator of life. So now it's time to express your true nature and birth a new, greater reality. Blessings, everyone. Happy Sunday.